In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, they're eating the pets of the people that live there. They're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, they're eating the pets of the people that live there.
People of Springfield, please don't eat my cats. Why would you do that? Eat something else. People of Springfield, please don't eat my dog. Here's a catalog of other things to eat.
They're eating the dogs.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
They're eating the cats.
Meow, 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 meow.
They're eating the pets of the people that live there. They're eating the dogs.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
They're eating the cats.
Meow, 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 meow.
They're eating the pets of the people that live there. They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. They're eating the dogs.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
They're eating the cats.
Meow, 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 meow.
They're eating the pets of the people that live there. They're eating the dogs.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
They're eating the cats.
Meow, 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 meow.
They're eating the pets of the people that live there. In Springfield, they're eating.
You're muted, Dagnum. Muted. All right. Yeah. So, I mean, we're here to talk about Immutable News. And, I thought that clip was the perfect segue to this topic because that is probably going to be internet history. And 100 years from now, if anybody has any doubt if somebody actually said that Trump was talking about eating dogs and cats, we now have the ability to verify and validate all of that information on chain. And if anybody tries to augment that, we'll be able to see it. And that's super important, especially with all the disinformation that's going around. So today with me, I have two people who should absolutely need no introduction if you've been following along Constellation and what they're doing. But I have Tabalo and Court Weltley from the Immutable News submission to the hackathon. So why don't you guys talk a little bit about exactly what this is and why you think that it's important?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start. The Immutable News, we call it the Encrypted News Network, is our submission for the Constellation hackathon. And we worked in association with a man named Ryan Wallerstein. He founded a company called Alyssa Edge. He's been instrumental, in a lot of financial crime reporting. And he also worked with quite a few agencies, the Treasury, for financial crime reporting-esque type activities. And what this Metagraph is supposed to do, and the whole premise behind what we made, is to provide a way for people to share information, but also find information, scrape information on websites, and tokenize that information inside of metadata such that it can't be taken away. And in doing so, create a trail of accountability, as well as just a way for us to decentralize the dissemination and the consummation of that. Because it's very important to know directly from source where the actual information came from. Because if you don't, then you kind of run into he said, she said. There are revisions. Sometimes web pages get updated, and that's okay. But on that same kind of trail of accountability, it's very important for us to be able to say, yes, this person initially said these things, there were revisions, and then we have all these different timestamps. So it allows people to go and actually get an NFT that holds the metadata that's inside of the news based on very simple pieces of information that are inside of those stories.
Yeah, and I've got the little video running of your guys' submission, and this, outlines how the data is sort of disseminated in the data flow. Can you maybe explain a little bit how Constellation's the architecture of DAG and Metagraphs are utilized in this encrypted news network to enhance secure information and dissemination, and how this approach actually is different than traditional blockchain solutions?
Yeah, so I can take that one. Yeah, so I'm, when this first started, I hit up Court. I was like, okay, let's build something. I feel like we could build something cool. The immediate thing we come up with is like, hey, if we could have some accountability layer and tracking of news, kind of through the Metagraph and DAG means, this would be a huge value add. A lot of it came from like a social good perspective, and then obviously there's kind of this accountability aspect in journalism and decentralization, and particularly with financial crime and cyber and crypto news tracking that we already kind of are all tied together to. So we all had a common interest. So as we partnered with Illicit Edge, it was clear, okay, we can collect the news. We're all, we data mine the news too. Illicit Edge is collecting the news that's even, more specific, kind of his niche of the industry. And so what we knew is like, okay, we can collect and crawl it. We can expand that data profile that's pretty standard from like RSS feeds. So if you just, look at any standard RSS feeds, there's like common news automation that happens in mining it. And then we just extended that data model and that profile to have a more metadata tied to sort of that source of news, a hash of it tied to a DAG address. And then we can transmit that same payload to the Metagraphs data L1 that then gets downstream. So it kind of in the architecture you had on your screen. I don't know if you want to pull it back up, but in a very high level, you can just submit a URL to be news or mined, or we could do it like centrally, kind of automated. And then we do pre-processing. We prepare that payload, and then we just send it to the Metagraph L1 endpoints, and then we can tether that back into the DAG address. A lot of this was you kind of rough around the edges, and really just a proof of concept of, we can build these data profiles and then we can transmit them. But the topology we have, at least it could scale very well. So the server is just pre-processing the news, and then it's building essentially the NFT profile, which is just metadata of the news tied with Metagraph elements and a hash of the data to have a point in time verifiability element. So if you get the source of that news profile, you run it through the same hash algorithm we use, then you'll get the same hash, then it hasn't been tampered or manipulated. And like we were talking earlier, the same framework, we're using it with like news profiles and news data in traditional like CMS, content management systems, and RSS systems that are very common across the internet and media organizations. But that same framework of building these metadata profiles on any source data is kind of I think the thing that I know Court expounded upon on the README here, the main paper of this. But that's really kind of the power we're trying to show. And then having a directed acyclic graph tied to Metagraph clusters and scalability, kind of with the Scala environment is totally feasible for any source data. So that's my 2 cents here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's kind of, when you think about it, I mean it could be used in almost any any application. Like just the one that hit me right away, and I pointed this out to somebody on X, was, you know, you could even use this in a secure, you know, messaging environment, right? You could have two, you know, clandestine operators sending secure communications. You know, you could even have like a whistleblower implementation of this, right? Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different ways that you could apply this outside of just proving something was or wasn't posted on CNN, for example.
Exactly. You know, if you really think about what we're looking for inside of corporate communication or access to information, right? Because that's all the communication is, especially if it's not going to be, you know, a stream. If we have information that we can send as a tokenized version to someone else, or allow someone to tokenize packets or constructs of information based on a designated source, that designated source right now being Illicit Edge could actually provide a secure database that's encrypted in and of itself, that then is scraped, crawled, and then disseminated to controlled Stargazer wallets. And what this does is give us a way to model this framework to allow for interagency communications, secure information dissemination between agencies, as well as inside of control and operational units that need that type of secure information sharing. And then we can go to corporate level to combat corporate espionage. You know, there's plenty of applications outside of just providing news that this framework, if expanded upon, could really address and provide more security.
Yeah. So with that, can you maybe elaborate a little bit more on how KYC verification process works for like independent journalists or whistleblowers, and how the network would balance this, you know, approach with authenticity, but also, you know, maintaining anonymity, right?
Yeah, so it does allow for, let's say, when you are connecting to the site, if there's a traditional whistleblower site, you know, obviously people do try to scramble their IPs, but there is still sometimes a way to trace back to those folks. There's also a problem when there are whistleblowing events that happen. Is the information they're providing real? Did they say it? Was it bastardized somewhere along the supply chain of information? Was that data in any way changed? And we will know for a fact from the immutable date of submission, as well as the KYC processes that we go through. You know, there's additional protections that are provided to, let's say, tertiary operational providers, and in this case, encryption providers or data communications that protect whistleblowers in a way that certain agencies don't have. And so this would provide us a way to give a second fence, a legal defense, as well, for some of these folks that chose, so they couldn't be pressured to expose who they are, but also verify that they are who they say they are, and the information is at least valid in the sense that they're the ones who said it, and the proper information was reported upchain.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, this all goes back to, I guess, you know, the beginning of it, of our conversation about, you know, this potentially becoming a censorship resistance network, right? But also maybe a tool that you could use to combat all the fake news. Because right before we actually went live, Tabala and I were talking about all the bots that are even on X right now. I mean, it seems to me like there's more bots than actual users, and it's pretty wild. You know, you've got these news feeds, and then you look at the comments, and most of them are just AI bots that are getting even more clever every single day, and sometimes it's hard to tell if it's a bot or not, right? Because then these bots are having like conversations with themselves, which is pretty funny.
Yeah. There's this growing like world of like cyber social studies, and it's kind of this idea of okay, we used to think of a lot of social interaction, obviously just human or, congregation of a market or, just economic, like everything's in person sort of human interaction. But these like botnets that are getting formed, there's just specific keywords or hashtags or triggers that you start posting on it, or certain accounts, like then they just swarm. So yeah, there definitely needs to be a lot of research behind that, because attributing if it's true or false, but they know how to play very well and cater to very explicit animal spirits and human biases that are on social media that stifle more animated human response, or help whatever means of optics they're trying to transmit on the in broadcasting and channeling, all that. So yeah, there's a lot to it. Now I would say, at least on the whistleblower protection side, I do think there's a right to privacy. At some level, brokering news, there has to be you have to kind of stand on what you're sharing and saying and doing and identity. But also, in time, inside the government or agencies, that there's sort of explicit political lens that that they may or may not be able to even combat properly. So the thing I'd add there is, at least, like, if there's a channel or even like, or an organization that can consume it, and then they can sort of carry the torch and fight it. And we have to think in a lot of third world, or where journalism against power can lead to their death. Like, that anonymity aspect is like life or death, right? So that it's kind of the gravity of it. And at the end of the day, it's about truth and making sure that the people are educated and can advise on how their system runs. But we definitely don't want people to be in a information paralysis analysis, and we can't agree on just basic common grounds, or polarized rhetoric, and just kind of add some more professionalism back to the discourse of affairs, and what the United States and America is, or even the globe at large.
Now, getting back to some of that, I'm looking at the data flow diagram here. Can you discuss maybe a little bit more about like the origin and distribution tracking, along with maybe some like credibility scoring or feedback mechanisms that could enhance accountability and reliability of the information?
Yeah, Court and I were talking about that a little bit. Like, how would you have an algorithm that you could give, like, essentially a score if the source is good or not? And that could be based directly on like which NFTs are getting minted or not, right? Like, who's actually wanting an NFT of a news. So like just market kind of feedback. And then another means is just, kind of how the network creates itself. But yeah, that I mean, Corey, I know you have some thoughts here, so I'm let you chime in.
Yeah. So when it comes to like scores in terms of the data, we already have kind of a model that we can look at, pro scores, right? So as far as those algorithms, they exist, but it's for different data points, but it's a very similar type of interaction. So we really just need to find the specific way. And I think the best way to do it would be to just have an actual control mechanism like we do, right? And obviously inside of the model that we've presented, we would like for people to be able to go and submit their own stories or say, look, we'd like to tokenize this. Well, we're not guaranteeing, except that illicit edge stamp, that the news is unbiased or, even in some cases, 100% factually correct. What we are saying is that on illicit edge, they're particularly focusing on unbiased information. And that human element behind the technology is really important. And that's something that we can't forget. We can never be 100% dependent on protocols. We always have to know who is behind the tech, like what Illicit Edge is doing, and then also have that ultimate human control. Because if we ever had a protocol that, would just, okay, here's attention, so whatever's getting minted, then it goes right back to attention economy, not necessarily accuracy and truth, right? So the main focus is to make sure that we we provide accountability in that historical chain for what has been said, who said it, when they said it, not why, not to expound upon, not to say whether or not they said 100% the truth. It's to record history. And in this way, we can provide a kind of long form in a sustainable way and model for us to record what has actually happened and who has said it and when and why, or not why, but and where, so that we can see down the road and look back upon the mistakes as well as the successes that we've had. And all that comes down to, the way that people interact with each other. That's very basic. And, for the longest time, to the victor has gone history, and the victor could write history however they want. In this way, as long as these databases survive, there is a way for us to reflect back upon even very simple news, all the way down to corporate communication.
Yeah, so I was thinking while you guys were talking about a way that you could maybe implement scoring with AI, similar to the model that Forward Edge is going to do with their weather data, right? You have your AI model right here, and then you've got your user, down here, and then here's the external data sources, right? And then users can provide scoring, and then the AI model up here could get feedback from everything, and then users could say, yeah, this is a trusted source, and maybe that's how you could implement it, similar to this little layout that they have for the weather data.
Absolutely. And for people that provide the news, right, as opposed to just like share it or provide sources, yes, we're going to have to come up with something like that. And I think this is a great way to do it, right? Because, they can lose those points as they provide, data that isn't necessarily as factual as, would be preferred by, let's say, the AI protocol. So this would be a really good way that over time we could see what the average, quality of the content was based on factual information alone.
Right. Yeah. And it would, incentivize people to, report facts and not, hype, because you could start out with being a great, news network, but then quickly go downhill, right? Because you could turn into this, Russian disinformation bot, right? And then all of a sudden, you had a trusted source that was bought and paid for, and then it becomes not a trusted source, and then you could lose your pro score really quickly. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and that it just gets into this very interesting thing. I think we have to all be honest, just as a humanity, is that usually information always has bias, because at the end of the day it emanates from humans. So when we say facts or truth, there are facts that could benefit or have bias to one entity or the other. This could be a political party. This could be a sovereign. It could get even more as localized to, just interdepartmental or agency to agency. So I think that's kind of one of these important things we always have to remember, that when we say like consensus on a fact, it definitely that kind of verified, that sort of some level of grading or kind of percentile on truth would have to happen. But, I think a lot of the way this is shaping out in the internet and the information age is you kind of see the persistent patterns of the same information, and over a long enough of a horizon, then you can kind of say, okay, this is more fact than not. Sometimes things hit the press too fast, and then things change, and you might be transmitting news, premature information that's not exactly, you're doing misinformation or disinformation. It's just not properly assessed or analyzed, or even whoever's transmitting it may not even have done additional due diligence. They're just relaying it. And I think we've all done that, and even our parents. Historically, that's always kind of been.
It happened. It happened yesterday, right? Where was it yesterday with that second assassination attempt, right? So it was first reported that someone just was shot into the clubhouse, right? and then that went the rounds, and then everybody ran off of that. But then as the news came out, it was even beyond that. It wasn't just some guy like driving by the clubhouse, like shooting at the clubhouse. He was actually on the side of the greens, and he took direct shots at Trump on the green, and there was firing back from the Secret Service, right? And so, at first people ran with what they thought was true, but then then it later turned out that what was initially reported wasn't actually what happened.
Yeah, it gets into this realm of like, is truth static or it changes? But information is very dynamic. But at some point, there has to be some level of maturity or a stamp on it, and that's kind of what this news engine we've done here. That's kind of the general idea. Is like, okay, if you're publishing it, there's accountability on it, and I think that's kind of what the intent of what journalism is, right? There's more rigor than just rapid fire social media type approach, but that doesn't mean social media is less true. Like, you can get news faster on X than waiting for CNN or whatever panel, or CBS or Bloomberg, because they still have to figure out how they're going to frame it, and what headline words and semantics. So yeah, there's a lot to think through, but at the end of the day, accountability on intentional malinformation or disinformation that is negligent to the common interest is what we need to track.
Absolutely agree.
And and maybe getting back into that, maybe can you expand a little bit about how that could be applied directly, like to this site, to Illicit Edge, right? Because this is taking news from, like, they didn't make this story, right? This isn't something that they reported on. This is an article from the Wall Street Journal, right? And so I just clicked on that, and it sent me to the Wall Street Journal, right? And I'm definitely not subscribing to them, but like how would that work from the Metagraph standpoint? Like how does that play in here?
So as far as the Illicit Edge focus, what we really wanted to make sure that we did is have a controlled source of at least filtered for bias news. We're not guaranteeing it's completely unbiased, nor is Illicit Edge the publisher of said news. They're the aggregator, right? But we focused on them because they go out of their way, their team goes out of their way to screen everything to make sure that at least there are no, opinions added in. Now, obviously, the presentation of the information could be biased, etc., right? But they look for stories that only contain old school journalistic practices in the approach to the actual spread of the information. And that is who was involved, what happened, when did it happen, what time did it happen? And, that's what should be judged for truth. Who said it? If you can judge those variables are actually facts. And those don't really change. Like, there could be a consensus made about times or accounts, right? But like you said, Trump saying, "Oh, they're eating the dogs," meow meow meow, the song. That in of itself, you could say, "Oh, well, he did say that on this," and it could be an account from that person, or a report, but it is a factual thing that did happen. So they just look for that, no opinions included, and that's why we really focused on making sure we could at least initially start tokenizing it and then disseminating disinformation in a decentralized manner, because these stories seem to be and are very, very important inside of the grand scope of what's happening in the world. And it really does affect, in terms of disinformation, how people choose to react to these events because they see it, and immediately, they're starting to think about, these sanctions, different types of AML and KYC violations, crypto crimes, there's tons, and it has different jurisdictions built in. It's a wonderful initial model for the type of news and the type of reporting that we would like to see being used with this technology.
And I didn't see on the dev post thing, I didn't see like tokenomics. Do you guys have like how would that work? Like how would people get rewarded for submitting like good news, I guess? Like how does the tokenomics work?
Tabalo, you want to take this one, or you want me to?
I'm gonna let you take it because you kind of came with more of those the proof of concepts on those and
Gotcha.
strategies. So I'll let you do it.
So as far as the news consumption, right? We didn't think that it was going to be very sticky in terms of sustainability and overall, business model for us to not necessarily let them do it for free. Because there's not much to be gained from going out of your way besides doing a service. It is a public good to disseminate this information and then decentralize it and help with that decentralization. But when people come to our site, we figured it would be better for them to actually be rewarded via the service that they are providing, right? So there's some legalese that's going to have to go on, and it might be a 1099, right? Plenty of apps do that. But as you consume the news, the sponsors that can be on this Illicit Edge page, this actual site, can then go to a liquidity pool, and just like ads, they can help with that decentralization and then be rewarded from the liquidity pool of the sponsorships. And so in this way, as more people start to revert to consuming news that at least has been filtered to an extent, plus additional news that doesn't have, like, let's say, an Illicit Edge stamp of approval, but is from a bunch of other places, has been contributed by someone themselves, they can go consume, receive a token, and then afterwards go and contribute to the liquidity pool, stake it, receive a little bit back in LP. And because they're actually providing a service using their compute via the storage of the metadata, they are technically providing, something to the network, and therefore can be paid out. So this is a good way for us to have a sustainable business model.
Nice.
Yeah, and another thing to add is there are certain providers where they don't let us, like, we can't crawl the site or the URL. So I mean, if we can't pull the news, then we just say, hey, we can't mint it or token, and then that's it.
Yeah, because a lot of that stuff is gated. It's funny now. Most of the news sources that I go to, it's all paywall stuff. It's just hidden behind paywalls. Yeah, and I guess this could be a good way to maybe remove those. I guess, like, if you had people like earning tokens, they could get access to this paywalled information, right?
Yes. And I mean, if you can imagine, a step further, the people that choose to contribute their stories, they receive a token every time someone goes and mints, their news. If it is a good piece of news, like the ball mentioned, maybe it gets a lot more attention. They get more news, then they stake more. And during that epoch, they can receive more of the liquidity pool in terms of the sponsorship money, right? And so in that way, it does provide a way for independent journalists to come to the platform and actually use it in a way that would be able to significantly, support them if they became popular enough.
Yeah, and so that model makes sense to me. Like, having Wall Street Journal or Politico or New York Times, CBS, all these people here, incentivize them to come here. But like, from an end user perspective, how does the tokenomics, how would I benefit from this immutable news platform, like if it was called the news token, right? Like
Well, you
what
could
would
potentially get paid for consuming the news.
yeah. Okay.
You wake up, mint a couple stories while you're having your coffee, stake your tokens, receive some LP tokens back, cash out, right? Because you're providing an actual decentralized service with your compute power. It's the same concept as mining to a certain extent. But it's because the network, it's a beautiful way that it works. Many DAOs have similar concepts. I mean, even ads, like I mentioned, has a very similar concept. And it avoids the derivative action because it's not forward-looking profits. It's direct service via the sponsorship that is associated.
Free news. but true news, right? Yeah, no, this is great. And when is there like a timeline? I mean, I know that this was like a proof of concept that you guys submitted for the hackathon. Do you guys have like a roadmap?
This could be launched if we had another 2-3 months to work together and reasonable resources to throw at it, right? That's why we entered into the hackathon. This is a proof of concept that both of us, as well as Ryan, believe could absolutely work. But as Tabalo has Yeatum and I have Entrana, unless this was supported in a tertiary way, this is a proof of concept, and that's what it will be. We obviously want this and know that this could be a wonderfully successful idea, and we hope it is supported. But through that, we're not going to spin this up just out of the blue unless we have a surefire, at least base of support inside of the network, as well as we do need to have, IDs on the seed list if this was to be a Metagraph, right? Because it is still a controlled network to an extent. So this is ready to go. It has a little more iteration to do in terms of like that overall long-term vision that we spoke about. But 60 to 90 days, and this could be a fully functioning MVP on the network on mainnet, and sustainably operating in a small way, growing over time.
I mean, once delegated staking opens up, though, I mean, you could potentially, launch this if that's something that the community wanted, and it wouldn't cost you anything. I mean, that's one of the other benefits of this network is, it should incentivize developers in that way. I mean, I can't think of another network that offers, that sort of flexibility. I mean, you could have people, essentially crowdfund your project, and you wouldn't have to do anything. You wouldn't have to put up really any collateral. Yeah. So I mean, maybe that's something that
Absolutely.
we could do.
And the network delegation, wonderful, because it really does, like you're saying, allow people to come in and build something that the network might want, and if the network wants it, they can go and they can actually let that happen. And then that reward can be provided back, the companies, people delegating themselves. It's a beautiful system. And so if those node IDs are provided, if we're allowed to get this Metagraph up, 60, 90 days, and, we're good to go. There's just a little more to do in terms of adding additional features, that kind of thing. Proof of concepts are wonderful. MVPs, that's a business-ready, sustainable piece of technology, as well as a business plan associated that is ready to go and actually be flexible enough to spin if it needs to. And we know that this could be. It's not just a good concept, but the overall architecture of the business plan is something that we know could last. And it's something that we think the public needs. Like we talked about, like there's a lot of bullshit out right now. And it's not going to stop. People are still going to say things. They're still going to tweet. They're still going to do news stories that are a little biased, whatever. What we want to do is make sure that we at least know who said what. And we know when they said it and why. Maybe if somebody decides to write about that, right? But it doesn't really matter what the information is as long as we make it immutable, because then it can be reflected upon and analyzed. So truth scores, yes, they're important, especially for providers. But the most important thing first is that even if it's bullshit, we get it on chain so that we know that somebody said that.
Yeah, it's there, and you can't scrub it away. And it's funny because I don't think a lot of people realize that there's companies that get paid for that. Like whenever a business has bad PR, I mean that's what they do, and then they literally bury that with other news, and then so it makes it almost impossible to find the original source information. And so having the ability to be able to go back to something and see that, yes, that actually happened. And, it happened on this date, and, this is what was said is, I think, invaluable, to, humanity in general. And it's crazy because right now we're actually seeing like the Internet Archive, like the Wayback Machine, right? People are trying to defund that, which is pretty crazy. And so it's going, they're making it harder and harder to go back and see, stuff that happened even 20 years ago, which isn't that long ago. But yeah, it's almost as if history is being erased. And you have no way to verify it because everything is done digitally now, right? We don't really have like hard copies of anything. And, since everything is digitized, if you don't have a way to secure that stuff and have it live on forever, like on something like blockchain, you could completely rewrite history if you wanted to.
Yeah. And, if you think Library of Congress, it has history, physical history, every book, digital identities of those books maybe would be an actual good idea because, distribution of not just news, but of information in this way allows for that information not to be taken away. And I know that people like to focus on the immutability of distributed ledger technology, crypto, blockchain. But what we haven't really focused on is getting our very simple elements of like our story, who we are as people, what we've done and what we're going to do and our plans and our past plans. And, there's so much and it's very intricate and it's very personal and it's part of who we are. And it's very important for us to make sure that we don't forget who we are. And the only way we can do that is to make sure that we put what actually happened so that the next generations can read, because we're making tons of mistakes and our last generations made tons of mistakes. And if they don't get to read about what, we spoke about, what we did, the news stories, like there's all sorts of things that have been lost over the sands of time that we wish that we knew. That's why, we have archaeologists and,
well, give me 1 second because like this actually, here, let me pull up my screen. It gives me, so there's this guy that actually is doing some of this, like trying to preserve, I don't know if you guys are following this guy at all.
No, I don't know who that is.
Yeah, he's I think he is like a data scientist guy.
Okay.
Most of the stuff that he talks about all revolves around AI, and he's cataloging like all of this old. He's curating all of this old stuff, right? Like movies, like VHS tapes. Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's pretty cool. I mean, because that's what he's trying to do is like preserve humanity on chain, I guess. And it's a pretty cool concept. Yeah.
And
I mean,
we're starting with the news. What we said. But we can do so much more. What we wrote, the media, everything. And those little pieces, step by step, modularly, I really think will lead us towards, never forgetting again, or at least being able to find out.
Yeah. So, yeah, to wrap up here, as you
we
mentioned
did
before,
Tabala. He had a hard stop, so he had to
Yeah.
go 2:30. But thank you, Tabala, for being here. We very much appreciate it.
yeah, if I don't know if you wanted to get into, I don't know if you got, like, as we're exiting out here, if you wanted to share any insights into your other project, because that's where most of your focus is dedicated to. As you talked about earlier, most of your time is focused on Illicit Edge. I'm not Illicit Edge, sorry, Intrana.
Yes.
I'm looking at Illicit Edge like right now on my screen, and yeah. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if you have maybe want to give people an update on Intrana, or maybe talk about that for the like two people living under a rock who don't know what Intrana is.
So we launch on Halloween, this coming Halloween, not next one. So 50 days or so. So it'll coincide with the actual launch of the PGF app too. So Professional Grappling Federation, we're making a fantasy app for them. Will be on UFC Fight Pass a couple days after our launch. So we're going to launch. We're going to have our marketplace, a couple modules up for some of the business use market for the chupacabras. Congratulations, everybody. And then a couple other features that people will get to find out about, right? And one of the things that Intrana focuses on is obviously tokenization. But there's going to be consumer products. There's going to be tons of modules for businesses that can come and use Metagraphs in a whole new way. It's going to be a singular Metagraph, ours, right? But we have ways for us to create efficiencies, be it event management, payment processing, data encryption and transfer. There's always something for everyone on this in terms of what it can do to protect you, make sure that you're ready for the quantum computing age, and also create efficiencies where there need not be complications. We're not trying to shove blockchain into everything. We're just trying to make sure that we record the most important parts about these business operations, be it financial advisement or the healthcare industry or cattle, or tokenizing certain commodities like oil or gold or any sort of precious metal. We're really going out of our way to make sure that we have a multitude of products that are going to be available for the consumption by enterprises as well as consumers, so that on day one, when people hit the ground, they have something that they can engage with and they don't have to really wait around. So we'll do a nice little phased launch of most of the major modules for these enterprises, and we'll have announcements through the PGF and beyond well into the new year about the new stuff that we're introducing. So we're going to be coming, nice little testing with the public, make sure everything's going well. Everything will be audited, of course. But that initial introduction, we're going to focus module by module by module, and then just build. Initially, we'll launch a couple, but as we go, it's going to be very interesting to see, how much is tokenized. Because, with the NDF, we do have the way to express the dollar on chain. And I'm very excited to be able to provide that service. It'll obviously be free because it's from the NDF. That's not something that's going to be a for-profit engine. But through that, the tokenization of the traditional financial assets is going to be a very smooth transition, as opposed to some of the issues that people run into, which is on and offboarding, which we won't need to because the dollar will just be on chain in a chain agnostic way. So that's what we got going on there. It's been a long time coming. We've been working our asses off, and I'm very proud to present it finally.
Yeah, and to give people an idea of just how big of a potential this is. I got this graph up here, and this is just tokenized treasuries, and like right now as we're talking, it's over $2 billion right now, and none of this stuff is actually represented in a way that you talked about. none of this stuff is represented as the true dollar on chain. It's all done via stable coins, and as you've talked about before, there's problems with that.
Yeah, stable coins, man. There couldn't be anything more ineptly named. They are not stable by any means of imagination. And, if you think a stable coin is stable, then ask yourself how every single one that has ever existed has depegged at some point, and how that is possible if it's truly a stable coin, right? There should be no singular party or a controlled group of interest controlling, what should just be stable expression of value, right? And, this is a PGF site.
I was going to go back into that because you hit in a little bit of that when I was asking you about Intrana, and then you were talking, a little bit about what the PGF is doing with UFC Fight Pass. Maybe get into that for those who haven't really been following along.
Yes. So the PGF, this is going to be season 7. It's founded by Brandon McCaffern and Keelan, lawyer. And they then brought on Zoltan Bathory, the founder of Five Finger Death Punch. He's also the bassist. And then Heather Gracie, who is, she's the granddaughter of Mr. Gracie. Her family created Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So crazy team. And I got in touch with them. They have a league. It's a jiu-jitsu league, but it's a very different jiu-jitsu league than most leagues, right? It's all action, have to continue moving forward. It's break or choke only, so only kills, right? And different points are awarded for different styles of finishes. But invite only, it's a bunch of couches surrounding, and it's very intimate. And there's a week-long tournament. Very legendary coaches come and actually, pick their teams. And we thought it would be a wonderful idea that someone could come and be one of those folks, that picks a team. So you get to participate and act using this app that's connected to the Metagraph, and actually see if, your team is going to do well. There'll be plenty of prizes, fantasy apps, token distribution, all that kind of thing. The normal thing that you're used to in a compliant way. There's not going to be any gambling, right? But it's a very high-paced or fast-paced, high-intensity tournament. And then the very end, they announced the PGF world champion. The most exclusive fight tournament that is out right now and that I think will exist. And if you know anything about fighting, you look at who's watching, who is there. It's every legend, every single person that matters. Sheiks show up to this. It's a very, very exclusive thing. And we're just very blessed that they allowed us to be associated. I couldn't thank Brandon enough for that. And I'm really excited for everybody to try out the app because it's going to be a really cool way for Metagraphs to be used just in a live sporting event. And we were going to enter it in the hackathon, but this is something that we want to be used and will be used for a while, right? So we thought it was probably better to keep it closed source, but we're very excited about this, especially with the associate partners and all the really good people that we're going to be able to help. Because a lot of these boys work really hard. There's not a ton of money in jiu-jitsu now, but hopefully with a mix of technology and some other things, we'll see that change very soon.
Yeah, it's I can't wait. I mean, it's going to be crazy to have a lot of this stuff, represented, on chain, and it's going to be wild that all of this is going to be viewed in a mass audience. I think millions of people watch this stuff. Last year, season 6, I was trying to look at the numbers, and it's pretty astronomical how many people are actually participating in this stuff. And the only way to view it right is with UFC Fight Pass.
Yes. So the season, the qualifiers, all that, you can find them on YouTube, and when people are just getting ready. And then UFC Fight Pass is for the finals throughout the week, and it's beautiful. And one of the really cool parts is, the teams. There's people that are sponsoring teams and that'll have rashies, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Just make sure y'all stay tuned in to what is going on at the PGF. The millions of people, the technologies that's going to be involved. We're really looking to try to get Constellation and Intrana and so many other names, out there to the masses, because this is one of the fastest growing leagues, tournaments, and sports. And beyond that, the type of people that are associated are cerebral. They're very intelligent people that are involved in jiu-jitsu. They're not just savages beating their chests. They're smart guys, and technology is one of the things that they gravitate towards. So introducing it to a mass audience that maybe has not delved into this type of technology this deeply is going to be a really cool way to kind of mesh it with something that they're used to, like fantasy sports. And that stickiness, I really think, is going to go a long way.
Yeah, and when I think they started announcing some of the fighters, when is the timeline going to be announced where all of the teams are going to be revealed? Because the tournament itself is November 7th, correct?
November 3rd through the 7th or 8th, I believe.
Yeah.
But yes, I'm not going to say for sure when all the teams will be announced. I'll have to ask Brandon about that. Don't want to speak out of turn, right? But I know for a fact they will be announced soon. I'm kind of, I don't know. So yes, they will be announced sooner rather than later, I'm sure.
Okay. Yeah, I know that they've announced some of the fighters, but nothing about the teams. But I'm pretty sure that they've announced some of the fighters. We can switch to their posts here, and I think they have. I could be wrong, but yeah, you're right. We don't want to give away any alpha before we're supposed to. But yeah, I mean, it's great, and it's great that they're participating. It's great that you're helping this out, and it's going to be really exciting to watch. So with that, I think we've covered just about everything. I don't know if you have any final thoughts you want to share just about everything in general.
Metagraphs are taking over. There are a lot of developments happening behind the scene, a lot that I can't talk about, a lot that he can't talk about, right? But what I will say is that if you look yourself, if you look into the technology, not just who's using it, but why, you will understand what this technology actually represents. This is a better hammer for builders. This is a better saw. This is a tool that not only businesses can use, but consumers can enjoy the fruits of. And it is a perfect network environment. It is one of the most brilliant things that I've seen. And it allows for a lot of creativity. Metagraphs, Constellation Network, and some of the other things that they're working on. Don't sleep. Because, don't sleep.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to wake up and, what happened?
Don't sleep. I mean, yeah, I've towed the edge of giving away stuff that I'm not supposed to give away. Look, I've said things in so many different ways without actually saying it. But if you followed along, the writing is on the wall here, and this network is definitely one that you shouldn't ignore. And you shouldn't ignore it, not because of the users that are on it currently, it's the builders. And the builders themselves is what's going to attract and generate all the users. And this network, Constellation, the reason why they got people in the room like IBM, Microsoft, Panasonic, is because of the relationship and the trust that they've established with the end-to-end security application that they built for the federal government, right? So, the federal government stuff that I talk about a lot is interesting to me because it validates the network itself. And then from then, you'll have this public, applications being built on top of it by huge, corporations, huge entities that trust this network. They trust it because of what they've already proven to the U.S. government, right? So Constellation started off, and everybody can see the peer-to-peer communication, the peer-to-peer transfers. Everybody has a Stargazer wallet. I can send DAG to Court, and Court can send DAG to me. But what nobody in the public has seen yet, I've posted plenty of hints about it, is the machine-to-machine application. You can look at the National DigiFoundry and a lot of work that they're doing with the U.S. Space Force, in general. And this talks about the machine-to-machine application. And I can't really get into beyond that, these public enterprise people that are interested in that application. But look, every single day, somebody is talking about AI and, secure data. I made a post, I think it was like 2 days ago, about Qualcomm and some big energy oil company in like Dubai somewhere, talking about how they're utilizing AI and drones and cameras all in synchronicity about applying it to potentially, like, let's say there's a leak. Well, these sensors would detect the leak. It would automate drones to go out there, right? But the missing component of all of this, which hardly anybody's talking about, is applying blockchain to this application, because you don't want people mucking around, especially when it comes to machine communication and there's an AI element to it. You don't want somebody messing around with your code. It needs to be trusted. And the only way to do that is with blockchain, having a blockchain application. And yes, there's a lot of different blockchain applications out there, but not many of them have the same trust already built in that Constellation has in secure environments, right? Not just secured environments, but contested environments. And that's what they've done with the Department of Defense. So there's probably only a handful of blockchain companies that have that badge, have that stamp of approval. And then beyond that, there's very few blockchain companies that are already built for the quantum future, right? So that's one of the reasons why the Department of Defense was, kept giving Constellation contracts, was because they're quantum resistant technology. So, I made a post the other day about how Enterprise has until like September 30th to, start implementing, a lot of this zero trust stuff built into their networks. So, yeah, I mean, I realize that people get impatient, but, you'll see.
Rome wasn't built in a day, but I will say that oftentimes the most drastic source and type of change is the type of change that is necessary. Whenever the government has to pivot, they pivot hard, and they only do it when they have to. And we just lost all our social security numbers to hackers. So I'm pretty sure we have to at this point. And there's only one company that I know of that has proven themselves in a way that would be applicable to those types of situations, and that's Constellation.
There you go. All right. And with that, I hope you guys have a good rest of your week. And some exciting stuff will be shown at high def. I can tell you that much. All right. Take it easy, everybody.
Much love, Dagnum. Thank you.